It's lovely being here in Stockholm, and it always feels like a real honor being able to share the work that we're doing in the UK. So my name is Tara. I'm the head of user research at GDS, which is the Government Digital Service. We're probably best known for gov.uk, which is the website of the UK government. So I'm going to quickly give you an introduction to what we're doing, and then I'm here to talk about how we put users at the heart of what we do. And I think that's been one of the kind of really revolutionary things about our approach to kind of designing and delivering public services in the UK. So firstly, here's gov.uk. Okay, so that gives you a sense of kind of one of the kind of big things that we've been doing. We have literally spent the last 3 years switching off all the government's websites and moving everything over to gov.uk. So the whole of UK government, all of our kind of digital presence is in one single domain. But that's not the only thing that we do. So GDS are also responsible for kind of spearheading and driving digital transformation across kind of government. And we did this with the digital transformation program. This program has now ended, but it was very much about sowing the seeds for kind of really changing the way that we work in government, that we work together, and that we deliver digital services. So in the digital transformation program, we just took 25 kind of major services. So things like renewing your passport, or viewing your driving license, or applying for a kind of carer's allowance. We took some major services, spread across a number of different departments, and we just focused on transforming those services so that they were digital by default, and that they were simple, clearer, and faster for people to use. And they were good enough that people would actually actively choose to do things online rather than try and do them kind of in a sort of paper-based way as before. We also build platforms for government. So this is gov.uk Verify. And Verify is our identity assurance program. In the UK, we have a particular problem because we voted against national identity cards. And so it's actually quite hard for us to kind of verify people coming to do transactions with the government, and for us to kind of be confident that they are who they say that we are. So we are taking a federated approach. We're working with kind of third-party partners who might already have some personal information of kind of British citizens, and they are verifying identity for us, and then telling us that, yes, this person is who they say they are, without kind of sharing private data and allowing them to access our services. So that's one of our platforms. Right now, we are spending a lot of time building other platforms. So payments is another example. Often, traditionally in the past, whenever a department has decided to build a service, they've built their own kind of payments bit as part of their individual service. But you see that replicated kind of again and again and again across government. So in order to firstly improve the quality of the experience, but also to kind of save money. And there are massive cost savings in taking this approach. We're building one single platform that can be plugged into all of the different services being rolled out across government. Okay. A little bit of history. So it feels important to tell you a little bit about kind of how we've managed to achieve this. And it wouldn't have happened without these two people. So at the bottom, the man is Sir Francis Maude. He was at the time, in 2010, he was our Minister for the Cabinet Office. And so the Cabinet Office in the UK is responsible for making sure that the whole of government is working efficiently, is being effective, that departments have the resources that they need to be delivering kind of in an efficient and effective way. And Sir Francis asked the lady, who is called Martha Lane Fox. She was the UK digital champion at the time. She's, in the UK, she's a very well-known businesswoman and entrepreneur. She was behind one of the kind of big success stories of the initial kind of dot-com bubble in the early kind of 2000s. So Martha Lane Fox was asked to write a strategic review of what was then the kind of website of the UK government, and it was called DirectGov. But it wasn't what gov.uk is. It was very much just a shop front to government services. So it had some kind of popular citizen-facing services, but then they linked you through to these transactions that were usually hosted by individual departments. So it was quite different. And she wrote a report, and the head title of the report, the subtitle of the report was Revolution, Not Evolution. And she proposed kind of four key things around this revolution. She said, we have to fundamentally change the way that we design and deliver digital services. And her four recommendations were, firstly, create a centre of excellence. So historically, in the UK government, and I don't know whether this is the case for you in Sweden, historically, we've always outsourced all of our kind of IT projects to kind of big third-party suppliers. We've not had specialists in-house. We've not had the capability in-house to kind of deliver kind of digital services. It's always something that's given elsewhere. And the civil service has generally been made up of generalists, so people who are career civil servants, career public servants, but are kind of generalists and will move from kind of different roles and upskill at the time. So she said, you know, if we're going to deliver digital services, we actually need to bring expertise in-house. We need to kind of take that power back so that we can kind of really meet the needs of our citizens. So her first recommendation was create GDS, so create this Centre of Excellence. And at GDS, we are all specialists. You know, we have user researchers, we have designers, we have developers, we have technical architects, we have kind of digital product managers, etc. Then she said, fix digital publishing. And this was very much about having a single platform for publishing. And that's what gov.uk is. Gov.uk is a publishing platform. So previously, with all of you know, the hundreds, more than hundreds, we've transitioned over about kind of 400 websites. With that multitude of different web presences, there was no consistency in terms of how we published to the internet, the formats that we used, the language we used, and the kind of standards that we set ourselves when we were kind of communicating with citizens. And so fixed digital publishing was very much about bringing everything onto a single domain so that we could really begin to kind of create a consistent user experience. She also said fix digital transactions. And by that, she was talking very much about kind of openness, about leveraging kind of what's already happening. So publishing APIs and making sure that we're working in a way where we can actually deliver kind of services at the point of need. We know that our citizens kind of will often go to kind of other sources, to other websites, to other places to kind of access services, and that's okay. So the government website shouldn't try and replicate the entire internet on its website just so that everybody can do everything there, because that's not how users work, that's not how they think, and that's not what they want to do. So she said, well, stop trying, you know, take that ambition is an irrelevant ambition. So leverage kind of relationships, you know, leverage kind of other people who are already doing things really well and work with them to provide kind of good quality services. And finally, she said, do it all properly. Obviously, these are my words, not hers. But by do it all properly, she meant established really clear standards. The standards for kind of how we write content, standards for how we design, so we have a set of design principles, standards for technical architecture. In the past, because we've had all these kind of tiny, tiny websites that have sprung up, and then people have added things to, the technical architecture of government has been really, really messy, and then hugely expensive when you want to make a change or when you want to fix something, because it was never built on a particularly robust or kind of solid foundation. And then finally, user experience. This is we are providing services for people. So let's do that properly. Let's kind of really set a benchmark for what the quality of experience should be, and let's focus on meeting user needs. So our aim is to make services so good that people prefer to use them. So we're making digital by default services that are simpler, clearer, and faster. And for the rest of the time that I have with you, I'm going to talk about how we're putting users kind of at the forefront of that. So how we start with user needs, first of all. So we start with needs. And by needs, we very much mean kind of user needs, not government needs. This is what government IT software projects have looked like in the past. They've very much been started kind of with policy, so lots and lots of kind of documentation, lots of consultation, but not really involving citizens. And then there tend to be kind of really long, drawn-out procurement processes, because historically what we have done is completely outsourced the entire thing. We've given it to someone else to do and deliver. But the procurement process itself in the UK has historically been long and messy. And then, the external supplier, whoever wins a kind of project, then goes away and essentially behind closed doors makes something. And they make something and then they launch, and then that's the first time that we see users kind of actually sort of interact with the product that we've kind of designed or delivered. And that's the first time we begin to get feedback about, actually, was this the right thing? That's often the time we find out that, oh, actually, maybe we got it wrong in the first instance. But because we've already delivered this kind of really large and expensive IT project, the opportunity for change is very, very difficult. And so this has been kind of quite a fundamental shift, that rather than having kind of the user needs right at the end, and our first encounter with users right at the end of a development project, that we begin with them. So this is a screenshot from our design principles, and this is our kind of overarching design principle. This is the first principle of GDS, and this is kind of the guiding light for kind of how we work and what we do. And it is start with needs. And then, just to be really, really clear, it clarifies user needs, not government needs. And so this is one of the kind of really revolutionary aspects of what we're doing. We start with kind of understanding our users. So we don't start with kind of, our own kind of, policy aims and the things that we want to kind of do. We kind of start with kind of the real people who will be using our services, and we use that to inform kind of what we design and build. I've just put in this kind of definition. This is Thomas Sharon, who writes a lot around kind of design and usability and user experience, and he defines a need as a necessity arising from a certain problem. And I like his definition because of the way that he sort of says it arises out of a certain problem. So from a research point of view, our focus is very much on understanding that problem. You need to understand the problem that you're trying to solve before you can articulate the need. You can't just come up with a bunch of needs in the abstract. You need to understand the big picture context for what people are trying to do and where their needs aren't being met, so that you know you've got the right needs in the first instance. So that sort of first slide that you saw, where we had kind of user needs right at the end, this is how we work now. So we've kind of essentially kind of turned that entire process on its head, and we start with user needs. We start with kind of going out into the field and spending time with people and really understanding how they're living their lives, where they're being met and where they're not being met. And we use that then as a kind of sort of anchor to make sure that we're on track throughout the development process. And then we build things ourselves, in-house. And we use a an agile development methodology that I'm hoping that people will be familiar with. So we don't try and do everything and then just ship it, which is kind of very much been the sort of legacy of how we've done things in government before. We build things incrementally, which means that, you know, throughout the whole process, we can be checking and verifying, making sure we're getting feedback and that we are on track, that we don't kind of swerve off course. Okay. So these are not needs. I see a lot of this kind of stuff across kind of government. So departments have a lot of data about their users, and their data tends to look like this. It will be kind of statistics, it will be analytics, but this has no sense of kind of, you know, the real people or the humanity of the people. This doesn't tell you about the people that will be using your service. So my team are responsible for going out into the field and bringing people's real stories back and understanding them. So this is a picture of a journey map that one of the users that I was working with made. So she was, I'm not expecting you to kind of read the detail. I know it's very small, but hopefully you can see some of the emotion in the picture, and I think that's what I wanted to demonstrate. So I was talking to some people about how they went about setting up a new business and hiring staff for the first time. So there are various kind of compliance kind of needs. You have to kind of register with government when you employ staff for the first time because you're paying sort of employer's tax and other things. So it was a project to do with that. But rather than focus straight away on the kind of business and tax kind of compliance kind of requirements that we as government need to know about and need to make sure that our citizens are doing, we just went and spoke to people who had very recently gone through the process of hiring staff for the first time, and we asked them to tell us what was it like. And they made maps like this. And so this map, it does, if you could read it, chart out step by step every single thing that this particular woman did. So it tells a whole story. It's not just about her kind of digital experiences, because often, at the moment, people are not doing things online, and we are trying to kind of design services that are so good that they choose to do them online. So often people tell us about how they went to the post office and stood in a queue for hours and filled out forms. But we need to know what the reality is now so that we can design the right solutions to fix those needs. And the emotion is very important because, you know, these are real people that we're designing for. And when we're talking about user needs, we're not talking about functional requirements. We're not talking about kind of specification documents, which is, again, the kind of language that you associate with kind of previous kind of very waterfall-driven development methodologies. All right. And this is Liam Maxwell. Liam Maxwell is he's our Chief Technology Officer. So he gets to spend a lot of time with ministers. And he feels so strongly about user needs that he got a sticker made for his phone, which he likes to hold up. But I wanted to put this photo in because I think our role at GDS, so as a center of excellence, is very much to kind of continue to interrogate kind of our colleagues across government and to make sure that all of the services that they're building are meeting actual user needs. And so it's a constant conversation, but we also have published standards. But we also run assessments. So at every kind of gate of development, so in a slide earlier, I showed you kind of the process which starts with needs, but then we have an alpha, and then it moves into beta before it goes live. So each of those development gates, GDS kind of have service assessments. So you'll have a panel with specialists from each domain. So there'll be a user researcher, there'll be a designer, there'll be a content person, there'll be a technical architect. And they will basically interrogate the team building the service. So the team might be from any part of government. The team will come and they'll present their service and the work that they've done so far. And they will have to show to us and demonstrate how they've met user needs, how they're complying to our technical standards and our security standards. And if they don't demonstrate that, if they don't supply kind of sufficient evidence, then they don't pass that gate and they can't move on to the next stage of development. So they need to do that. Any service coming onto gov.uk needs to demonstrate how it is meeting user needs. So I think the enforcement aspect of it is quite important too. Okay. So the next point I wanted to talk about was how the user experience is everyone's responsibility. So at GDS, we have user researchers like myself, we have designers, we have content people. We don't have UX people. And we don't have UX people quite deliberately because of what Peter Merholtz says here. Peter Merholtz is somebody who writes a lot in that field. He's pretty well known. And he says, I believe that UX is an entire organization's concern, and labeling a group with the title of UX then absolves others of their responsibility. And I can't think of any area where this is not more important than in public services and in government. So user experience is everybody's kind of issue. And I think it's particularly important because a lot of the time when we are getting feedback from users, when we're in the lab and we're getting them to walk through prototypes that we've built, we're seeing that the challenges that they have are not interface issues, they're not design issues, they're policy issues, or there might be comms issues. And so it's really important that when we're working on a project team, we bring our colleagues from all of those different roles with us. It's their responsibility as much as it is ours to kind of understand the needs of the user. It's not something that the research and the designers kind of do and nobody else needs to take responsibility for. So fixing kind of government so that we're designing and delivering kind of high quality digital services means that everybody is responsible for the user experience. Okay. So my job as a user researcher, it isn't just to do user research, it is to make sure that I'm facilitating that awareness and that I'm helping the project team, the multidisciplinary team that I'm working with to understand about users, to know their users and to understand their needs as well as I do so that we can make a better service. I just wanted to show you a video of our observation room. So we have a lab in our offices in Holborn. We also use labs all around the country because actually we spend so much time testing prototypes. But I'm going to show you a video of the observation room and my colleague John talking through, because getting our colleagues across government involved is so important to how we work.
So this is what we call our observation room. So this is where people come in and see what goes on in the research. We recently had to make it bigger because we get so many people come from the project teams to actually want to see and learn about what's happening. And that's really important for us, not just that the user researcher sees what happens, but that the rest of the team can see everything and can learn from it too. So this is the screen where everyone gets to see what's going on in the research. They get a really, really good view. And what really helps me is there's someone in here who's worrying about all the cameras and the microphones, so I can just focus on doing the research. When people are in here watching research, we're really trying to get them not to be just doing their email and chatting on their phones. So we give them little capture sheets, we give them things to do so that we really get the most out of them being here as well.
Okay. So as John says, we will have people kind of in all the roles. So the project team itself, everybody is expected to be in the lab on the day that research is happening, and we tend to do research in every sprint. I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a minute. But everybody is there, and everybody is there responsible taking notes. So they're there writing down what their users are saying. So it's really going in. And then they're there also the next day when we kind of take all the data and we do analysis, and we do that as a team. And because of this approach, we have made changes to policy. We've tested, really, really long, drawn-out kind of transactions with lots and lots of questions. But the minute you see somebody struggling with these questions and saying, well, I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know how to answer it, and why am I being asked this? And you're the policy person behind the mirror who's responsible for that, and you can't come up with a good enough answer as to why that has to be there, then you take it out. So we've massively kind of streamlined a number of different sort of processes because we've had sort of policy and strategy and comms people involved. That person in the back, so this photo, this is we've just changed roles. We've had lots of leadership changes recently at GDS. But the person sitting at the back was the director of gov.uk. This is in the sort of home of a couple that we're speaking to about sort of how they make their childcare decisions. We were doing a project around kind of childcare because there are various changes to the funding that government makes available for kind of childcare. So we went and spoke to lots of people about, well, when you're trying to make childcare choices, what kind of things are you thinking about? And so everybody gets involved. So this is one of, the kind of senior leadership team at GDS who's sitting in somebody's front room, listening to them. So we go to people, but we also go to places where the people we'd like to be speaking to are. So we do something called pop-up research. You can't actually tell in this, but the Help Make Government Better online, that's actually a banner that we put up. We will often spend time in places like libraries, or if we're targeting a particular kind of audience, so let's say we want to talk to international students who need to apply for a British visa, we might go and spend time on university campuses. So we will go to the place our users are as well to make sure that we're constantly kind of making the most of opportunities for feedback. Okay. So research in every sprint. So as I said earlier, we work in Agile, so we tend to have development sprints, which are usually kind of 1 to 2 weeks. And we have a fundamental rule at GDS that we need to do research that's actually talking to real people, talking to users in every sprint. And a little bit about kind of Agile and how we work. We build stuff straight away. So this is Simon Williamson, who is, he's now the Director of Architecture at Eventbrite. And he says, you can now build working software in less time than it takes to have the meeting to describe it. And I don't know if it's similar in Sweden, but I certainly know in the UK, there are a lot of meetings, in the government. We have a lot of meetings, and we have lots of stakeholders that we all need to talk to. And then there's long consultation processes where we're consulting with one group of stakeholders or not. And there's a huge amount of time. If you took that particular path to making decisions, it takes literally months, if not years sometimes, to kind of just get to achieving basic things. And often through those conversations, what you tend to do is narrow scope, because those conversations, you start then having kind of, factors that conflict, people who have different opinions, and you begin to constrain scope. So we try and avoid that as much as possible. We just go make something. Because the minute you can make something, firstly, you can demonstrate that things that people will say are impossible are achievable. And if you make something, so if you build something in HTML, so we're not talking about kind of wireframes, we're not talking about we're not talking about axial prototypes. If you make something, you make things that, kind of the idea of which seems scary, it makes it feel exciting and achievable. So we build stuff straight away. We start building right at the very beginning. We don't wait until we've got like a massive functional specification document that thick. And we don't wait until we've kind of consulted with everybody. We start building stuff straight away. And the minute we have a working kind of prototype, so something in HTML, we can start getting feedback from users, namely, but it's also something we can kind of start showing stakeholders if we need to. But the main kind of point of the exercise is that we start getting feedback from users. And then we iterate wildly. I was kind of told the other day that the word iterate, there isn't a direct translation in Swedish. But essentially, it means that within every sprint, we kind of do research, we learn some stuff, and then we feed that directly back into the design. So we go and redesign stuff in every sprint, every 2 weeks. So it looks a bit something like this. So within every kind of sprint cycle, we build, we measure, we learn, we go back and we build again. Oh. Okay, so this is just an example of some user testing. Somebody's struggling with some input boxes, and this is a couple who live together. The woman is lower confidence.
On the drop down. So if you click on the arrow. Start. Okay. Yeah, just click on the date. You're going to click on the month. Yeah. But if you just click on it.
I don't know what you mean. I did click on it.
Click on May. Yeah.
Let's come back to month.
Just click on it.
Clicking on it.
With the arrow. Click on it. This is why I don't do this at work. I know. You've got to do different.
Oh boy. 1917 am I? Right.
Okay, so we did some research in this particular round of testing, which was for Government UK Verify, with some couples. So we wanted to make sure that we were talking to kind of lower confidence people. You can see how she struggled with those drop-down select boxes. This actual page that she was using is one of the third-party partners who's the identity verifier. But even this sort of stuff we feed in straight away. This is a screenshot of our design patterns, which is publicly available online. So we're constantly publishing patterns. So, okay, so don't use select boxes. We've seen over and over and over again people have the same experience as this woman. And so we'll start feeding this stuff into both the immediate project, so try our best to kind of persuade our partners to redesign that page so we're not inputting through those drop-down boxes, but then feeding in at a pattern level so that we've got kind of really clear guidance about how, if somebody's inputting their date of birth, what is the best practice for this? How can we kind of make sure that we're sort of achieving kind of high enough standards? The other, I think, challenge and thing that we spend a lot of time focusing on is ensuring that, firstly, research isn't something that, we just do but sits on a shelf, that research is something we deliver. And I don't think there's any point doing research. There's no point talking to users if you're not going to directly feed it back into the thing that you're making. It shouldn't ever be a checkbox, but you carry on your kind of design and development process regardless. It should be the thing that guides and drives the design and development process. And so this is James now, who used to be a member of my team. And he says, create insights that travel through an organization. So that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing. So we will make things and deliverables that really consolidate our knowledge and that aren't limited to just one project, but really kind of consolidate our knowledge and that we share with our kind of partners across government so that we really begin to kind of raise the bar in terms of kind of how well we know our users, and it can really begin to feed into kind of policy development again. So these are a couple of examples. This is from the childcare research. We learned in the childcare research, for example, that actually money was just it was a limiting factor. It's not the deciding factor when you're trying to kind of make a decision about whether you go back to work or not. It's how you feel, which is, I mean, it's common sense to anybody, but we needed to hear that as government, because in government we're focused entirely on the financial aspect of it, on the money we're providing our citizens, and on the cost savings or the kind of financial implications of persuading parents to go back to work. This is another example from the childcare research. We did a map of sources that people trusted and sources that people didn't trust. And I don't know if you can see kind of government websites is down at the bottom. It was one of the sources that people didn't trust and wouldn't check. But the sources that people did trust, which are up at the top, are friends and family, so personal contacts. And this is really interesting for us because actually it means what we need to do is kind of really leverage the sources that are trusted and that are kind of accessed kind of frequently. So it's kind of local community groups and local forums. So there were kind of lots of internet forums that were kind of specific to a particular community that people went to try and find reliable childcare. So it doesn't make sense to kind of spend loads of time creating content on gov.uk when that's not where people are going. But how can we kind of publish or kind of support those community forums that are the ones that are actually reaching people? And one of the kind of bigger projects is, at the moment, we're trying to build some maps of kind of big sort of life transitions, life experiences. So this is an example of the kind of things we're learning about people when they are interacting with government for the first time. So these are typically sort of younger people who are just leaving home, but it could be somebody who's just come to the UK and for the first time is having to get their head around how kind of the British government works. And we've used Trello, that some of you might be familiar with. And in each of these Trello cards, you can click in and you can find all of the research and all of the insights that we already have supporting the points. So we've tried to create a map that kind of maps out the experience. So this kind of stuff, this sort of stuff is not the kind of stuff that changes. People will still be having kind of babies in 10, 15 years' time and having that dilemma about, do I go back to work or not? People will still be arriving in the country in 10, 15 years' time or reaching the age of 18 and having to become independent. So these kind of things are really kind of durable insights and assets that we can continue to design policy on, and they're not dependent on the particular kind of administration in power at the time. Okay, my final point is around kind of not leaving anyone behind. So if you remember Martha Lane Fox, who wrote that original report, she's a very strong advocate for people with accessibility needs and people who don't have access to the internet or aren't digitally savvy. So we have two frameworks. Firstly, we have what we call our assisted digital framework, and this is focused on supporting people who won't be able to use the internet unaided, so that would always require support. So they typically tend to be people with sort of impairments that might stop them from using the internet unaided. And when we have services come in and at the assessment panel, they need to demonstrate to us again what they're doing to meet the needs of these users. So this is really, really key. I'm just going to show you a video of a user with a visual impairment. I think she's completely blind. She's just talking about what it would be like, actually, if she could renew her passport herself.
So we're looking to have a new online service to be able to renew your passport.
Yeah.
So if you were going to do it online, how do you think that would be different from the way you did it before with your parents?
It'd be empowering. I'd have my own independence. It gives me it's a whole confidentiality.
Yeah.
And it just means I can do it when I need to do it, instead of kind of saying to someone, oh, I need to fill in a form, when are you available?
Yeah.
I always say to people, it puts me in the driving seat.
Okay, so hopefully she was clear enough, but she says, you know, I will be able to do it when I want to. It addresses confidentiality issues. If I can do something myself, independence. I think, you know, she doesn't use the word dignity, but I think there's, you know, she's very much talking about kind of having a sense of dignity, being able to do something for herself and not being dependent on somebody to have to rely on. She says it puts me in the driving seat. So we have the assisted digital framework. We also have a framework called our digital inclusion framework. And this is slightly different. This is targeted at people who are not online and might lack the skills that allow them to kind of access digital services. So people who aren't digitally literate. And again, this is really important. So in the UK, 1 in 5 people don't have access to the internet or kind of lack the skills that would allow them to access kind of digital services. But there's a massive correlation between these people and other kind of social and economic issues. These tend to be people who are from kind of the lower socioeconomic groups. And so this, the digital inclusion strategy is very much around supporting these people to acquire the skills so that they can access digital services. Because we know that if we can do that, if we can support them in becoming kind of more digitally literate and support them in getting access, that we are likely to impact kind of health and economic and social outcomes as well. It isn't just about digital at all, because it's totally interlinked and dependent on those other things too. So my final example is, this is not the service. So the Department for Work and Pensions is currently redesigning the service. So this is the old service, but it's around reporting people who are committing benefit fraud. So people who are claiming benefits, but they're actually not entitled to. And the government at the moment loses, you know, billions of pounds a year on people committing benefit fraud. And they've had this service for a long time where you can report benefit cheats. So they recently came in to see us because they've started work on redesigning this, so redesigning it in line with the GDS standards. And I was on the assessment panel, so they were at the alpha stage. And it was a joy to kind of hear them, because they have been spending hours and hours and hours in some of the kind of poorest and most deprived areas in the north of England, kind of doing research, speaking to communities, spending time in the pub, because that's where the community gathers, and hearing people's stories. And there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about, you know, the person who's got the really fancy car, but they're claiming benefits, but they've actually got this job. You know, it's a kind of quite a hot kind of social issue. But in what they told us is that in these communities, they're very, very closed. And so, and there's a lot of taboo around being somebody who, you know, might report you. You know, in English, we've got words like, you know, sort of a grass or a snitch. So somebody who kind of, you know, tells the authorities about you. Yet people want to. They feel the injustice of people receiving money from the state when actually they have other sources of income. But one of the things that the team, when they came in to see us, was that actually the people who want to report people committing benefit frauds tend to be, that there is a correlation, they tend to be people who don't have access to the internet. They might be going to public libraries when they need to kind of look something up online. And so they've already started, and they're in very early stages of the development of their project. They've already started talking to kind of local community partners, so talking to sort of local community centres and talking to kind of the libraries about, well, you know, how can we address the issues around privacy and confidentiality, because we know that they are such big concerns. Nobody wants to be found out as the person who reported, you know, somebody else in the community. And so they're working with, you know, partners in these local communities to design booths where people can, you know, just go and access the internet in privacy. And it's that kind of thing that really demonstrates kind of the commitment and good examples of kind of digital inclusion. Okay, so just to sum up, 4 points to kind of, you know, putting users at the heart of what you do and making sure that, you know, public services are user-centered. So start with needs, so user needs, not government needs. Make everyone responsible for the user experience. Research in every sprint, and don't leave anyone behind. And I've got a final video just to show you some happy users. So these are real people.
And I thought that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And, you know, anybody worrying about it and thinking, you know, well, what happens, you know, if your parent or your partner or whoever it is dies, what are we going to do? I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it, you know. It's easy.
Well, one of the greatest irritations for businessmen is going in and out of countries where they're not a passport holder. And therefore, I think this has made it much easier for people to come into the UK. And I think it's going to be a good boost for the UK business overall.
People don't mind taking their laptops home. It's just generally a lot easier to work. I absolutely wish this had been done a long time ago.
He's like, you don't know how much it means to me. Like when, even that day when we're going to visit, he'd be ringing, are you coming? Are you coming? I'm like, yeah, we're coming. He's like, oh, I can't wait to see him and all that stuff. And it's nice to know that I'm making someone's day. Like, it's nice to know that he's happy, he can't wait to see us, you know what I mean? Like, I feel loved.
Definitely issues that affect young people are important to me in terms of politics. It's just kind of go on, very straightforward, get your national insurance number card thing and then done, sorted. So I think it's just like knowing that your voice is being heard. I think that's the best part.
All from me, thank you.
Thank you. It's so very interesting to listen to. Har vi några frågor? Ni måste ha någonting, passa på och fråga. Vi har inga på Twitter. I was just asking them if they had questions. Jag ser lite dåligt för jag, så ni får hojta lite. Någon fråga? Där, ja.
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
Stand up.
So you're talking about users' needs.
Yeah.
You're talking about the journey that you involve them in the project early.
Mm-hmm.
But do you try to find out the users' to have like inquiries and to better understand?
I think what we've learned, firstly, is that there is no substitute to actually just going and talking to somebody. So you can do lots of desk research, you can look at lots of reports that other people have done in the past. But firstly, in terms of kind of just getting the real kind of accuracy of kind of what, you know, their reality is, and getting a real sense of, okay, these are the issues we need to be designing for. But also in terms of saving time and money, it's often a lot easier just to start talking to people straight away. So often before, at the beginning of a project, we'll do discovery. So that might be before we've started building stuff. And discovery, we might spend time going to visit people in their homes or places of work. But again, I think that that's always better to kind of doing lots of desk research.
Vi gör så här. Vi had, där. Du får ställa dig upp precis och prata med magstöd.
The contradiction, okay.
Would you please just repeat the question?
So the question was around, you know, the conflict between kind of user needs and government needs. I hope I'm doing an okay job of summing up. So, and how we address that. And I agree, sometimes they can be at opposed ends. Firstly, I think one of the things that we've been able to demonstrate by just, again, getting on and doing stuff, and I think if we hadn't demonstrated it, it would be a much harder argument to kind of win, is that by meeting user needs, we have more effective policy outcomes. We kind of, you know, we have higher uptake of digital services, we reduce kind of user error, we reduce the load on kind of other government support. So we've seen kind of a number of services that we've launched where, you know, previously there'd been like really big call centers to support, you know, pensioners ringing up and asking about their pension statements. And we've seen, you know, drops in kind of those telephone helplines and call center volumes. So I think having already done this, we've been able to demonstrate kind of the very direct and tangible benefits to government. And also, we do have higher policy compliance. So in some cases, we've streamlined policy and made it kind of easier to kind of get through a service by kind of reducing the number of questions. But we're not trying to do something that's necessarily at odds to policy. And I think that's important as well to kind of bear in mind.
We don't have more time. Are you staying today? Can we?
I'm going to rush off very short. I'll be here for like the break. And then, yes, I'm happy to talk to people.
Okay. Yeah. We had our IT minister here earlier today, and he visited your GDS 2 weeks ago. And I asked him, is there anything I can tell you when you're here? And he said, tell her that I'm so impressed. Do you know anything about Sweden, how we're doing? Are you, by any chance, impressed by our work?
I'm afraid I genuinely can't answer that question because I haven't done enough research, and I'm sorry for that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Stor applåd.